We all know the Lakers have fallen on their faces. What else do you need to know about the Western Conference and how the Suns stack up in it? We'll dive into all of the teams throughout the conference playoff picture with Jackson Frank coming right up on Locked On Suns.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, covering the Suns the past 5 seasons as a credentialed media member. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen every single day. We are on YouTube, growing that channel ever so surely. And we are, of course, on all audio platforms, Google, Stitcher, Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen, we are there. And the best way to support the show is to do exactly what you are already doing, which is listening, which is watching, which is subscribing. So thank you for doing that. We're making our way here. One quick note. So, Rachel, I still need to hear from you. I might just DM you directly if I don't hear from you. This towel is yours. Just tell me where you live and I'll send it to you. As we get to 750 subscribers on YouTube, this towel could be somebody else's. So keep those subscriptions flowing in. I want by the time we're in the playoffs for there to be no more mention. I don't even want to have to tell you guys because I want everybody who listens to just be on that YouTube page by the time we are in another playoff run. But that's exactly what we're here to talk about today. Jackson Frank is our guest. He is an NBA writer at The Analyst, at Dime, at Basketball News, all over the place. And he's become something of our all the other teams in the West correspondent here on the show. So I wanted to bring him in. Jackson, how are you doing? And let's just dive right into it. What did you make of these two matchups, these two very high profile games between the Suns and the Warriors? That's where we want to start here.
Yeah, so in transparency, I only caught the first game, and then I watched like a little bit of maybe the second half.
It was a blowout. The second game sucked.
Yeah, and right. I just didn't feel like I could glean much from a game without the Suns' best or second best player with Devin Booker. The first game though was a joy. It was really fun. I think obviously you saw how good Ayton can be. It felt like some of those games in the playoffs last year when Ayton would go up against smaller lineups and just really use his size, his interior touch. He was awesome on the offensive glass early on. And so, when Draymond was on Ayton a little later in the game, he had a little more trouble. He was catching the ball a little farther from the hoop. And I think Ayton's improved, kind of putting the ball on the floor and have a little more versatility and scoring ability this year, but he still saw some struggles there. But and then late, you saw CP do what he's done in basically every close game the Suns have won this season. He took over with, pick and roll play, getting to the elbows, getting to those pull-ups. He had a bunch of really, really nice passes in that game as well. He always does, but that game just felt so precise from him. And then you saw what great team defense led by Mikal Bridges can do. Obviously, Steph missed some shots that he routinely makes over his career, but Mikal and Ayton and the team defense also did a really good job of making maybe reducing how many good looks he got. So. To me, it was just for many reasons, it was emblematic of what's made the Suns so good through a season and a half, with Chris Paul around and, Devin Booker and Ayton rising and Mikal kind of, figuring things out. But at the same time, in that first game, you continue to see some issues from Mikal offensively. He was not as aggressive as you like. He was hesitant with the ball. It felt like a lot of those games you saw in the last couple of rounds of the playoffs where, Mikal continues to be very good on defense, for the most part, but you need a little more offensively. You need him to take that open three. If he's not going to take it, he's going to put the ball on the deck and make a quick pass or get to that little pull-up that he's good at. So you saw some of the issues with the Suns, but largely you saw what makes them a team that's 20-4 and sitting atop the league.
Couldn't agree more. I think all of that we've observed all season, like you said. I mean, there wasn't necessarily a ton on the Suns' side that felt brand new. Obviously, you want to see it tested against the best competition in the NBA. That passing you mentioned from Chris was definitely an observation of mine. We talked about it with Matt Moore last week on the show, just the way that you think of switching a lot of the times as a way to generate an advantage as a scorer to create a mismatch. But Chris is so good about kind of turning the discomfort that might result from those switches into passing opportunities for his teammates. And we saw that. I think that's something we'll continue to see. Just he is such a master. He's faced this exact team so many times that I think that knowledge will drive him. Before we get too much further, though, wanted to let everybody know today's show is brought to you by TrueBill, the new app that saves you money by helping you identify and stop paying for the subscriptions that you don't want or need. TrueBill can even negotiate better deals on those that you want to keep. But my question on the Warriors, Jackson, you wrote something about Draymond a little bit ago that was really good. And, we know a lot about him. We know a lot about Steph. We think we know a lot about Clay. And even Andre Iguodala is back in the mix here. But what, from a Suns fan that maybe's only watched them a couple of times when they did play the Suns and is looking forward to Christmas and maybe a playoff battle between these two squads, what should scare teams the most around the NBA about this Warriors team, aside from the fact that Steph Curry is an insane basketball player who is just a force we've never seen before? What about this year's team in particular stands out to you?
Yeah, so I think aside from Steph largely, being an MVP candidate again like it was last year, just with a better team around him now, the three biggest things that jump out to me that weren't all present in that first Suns game is Andrew Wiggins has been a lot better. He's been awesome from three. I think he was dealing with back spasm that first game.
And he was questionable for the game. Woke up that day with
some just looked a little less spry, a little more stiff, getting to the rim, getting to his pull-up and stuff. So that's been huge for them. A scorer who can handle the ball with some size. They needed that a lot last year. Wiggins was good last year, but I think he's been even better this year. You saw what we saw in that game was Jordan Poole was awesome. He was a good scorer last year. He's done it even better on higher volume. I think he's taken a leap as a passer as well. Learning some of those reads that you see from Steph when Steph draws two off the screens or things like that, but also just able to make some more complex reads. And then what we didn't see also in that game is Draymond's been a lot more aggressive as a driver this year. Isn't taking a ton of threes. He has a lot of space to operate because the Warriors often have, really, really good spacing with Steph out there, even Poole. Other shooters like Otto Porter Jr. and Nemanja Bjelica, and Draymond, rather than just catch the ball around the arc and try to look for a passing lane, is going to say, okay, you're not going to guard me. I'm 6'7", decently quick. And I think he talked about kind of working on his quickness this offseason, and you're seeing that. And so he's shooting really well at the rim. He's getting the rim more, drawing more fouls. But that game against the Suns, you saw him kind of revert back to what happened against good teams last year at times, where he forces passes. There aren't as many open driving lanes because the Suns are a great defense. And so for the Warriors, you're going to need Wiggins to be the guy he's largely been all year against, for the most part, and then Draymond to kind of be that guy who is a very good passer still, but also can give you 8, 10, 12 points by just getting to the rim, drawing fouls, and then also doing everything he does as a passer. So we saw the Poole thing in that first game, but we didn't see as much of Draymond's, better scoring approach and Andrew Wiggins being that secondary handler that, has helped them be a really good offense this year, whereas last year they were not a very good offense despite Steph being himself.
Yeah, that was one of the big differences between the first game and the second game that I noticed. And I mean, it kind of just shows up in the box score, but it definitely just showed up in terms of the offensive fluidity that the Warriors had. Is that first game, all of their big man / forward playmakers were pretty much all bad. I mean, high turnover games. A lot of the times, Juan Toscano-Anderson, people were noticing in real time that his performance was just really, really out of the ordinary for him. He was looked lost on a couple of possessions. And you mentioned Draymond wasn't really himself. So Bjelica as well, I think he had 5 or 6 turnovers. So those guys were way better in the second game. And it obviously shows up with the way that they want to play on offense that, lo and behold, they're going to score better. And they were at home. And then, Mikal went out and no Booker for the first half and all the other differences that were pretty obvious as well. But does it feel to you like that's the most logical Western Conference Finals right now?
Yeah, I would say so. I think, they've been the two best teams all year in the NBA, really. I do think the Lakers are starting to figure it out, but they've still got a lot of it's a big gap, right? Even if they start to look like a top 4 seed, there's a difference between the 4 seed in the West right now and the top 2 seeds that are 20-4 and rolling. So yeah, I think right now, the Jazz have been, pretty good this year, but I don't quite feel like they're on that tier. I know we'll get into some specifics soon, but yeah, I think it's hard to say otherwise. And those teams are just so well organized on both ends. In that first game, I mentioned Juan Toscano-Anderson. I think one of the issues is he loves to, if when he dives to the rim or slips the rim after screening for Steph or Jordan Poole, he usually has an open dunk, or if someone rotates over, he's got the corner three or the wing three. The Suns were really, really good about not giving him a shot at the rim, and then behind that, they were helping the help really well, right? So I think he had one really, really bad turnover where he just kind of mindlessly threw it to the corner when the guy rotated to the rim because he expects that pass to be open. The Suns don't allow that pass to be open because they are so connected. So that was just emblematic. And then, on the flip side, we saw what the Warriors can do when they're rolling. Scott mentioned 17 points, Gary Payton 19. So how good those cutters can be with all the spacing around them, and Steph wasn't even great. I think he was good against the Suns, just from the stuff I saw, but didn't have to go supernova because of just as you said, Mikal went out, but the Suns just also weren't quite as connected, and that makes sense. They'd played 3 games in 4 days on the road, so. Sometimes that happens, but to answer your question succinctly, yes, those would be the 2 best teams right now.
The Jazz are the other obvious one. I think we're all looking forward to that Christmas Day game to see what the Warriors look like. We'll get to those Jazz, a team that the Suns haven't played yet, a team that I honestly haven't caught a lot of, so I'm interested to hear Jackson's thoughts. First, though, I want to tell you one more time about TrueBill. Do you know why free trials renew without your consent? Well, it's clear. It's a business scam to get your money. That's not really a secret. So don't let greedy corporations pocket your money. Download TrueBill to take control of your subscriptions. TrueBill, the new app that helps you identify and stop paying for subscriptions that you don't need, want, or maybe just forgot about. Companies love to make those subscriptions hard to cancel. They don't do you any favors by reminding you or letting you know how much you're giving them. They want you to keep doing it. But TrueBill flips that on its head. They make it simple. They basically allow you to just link your accounts and they will do the rest. They will cancel your unwanted subscriptions, and your TrueBill concierge will also help monitor which subscriptions you are actually using so that you don't even have to tell it, and it can find them and cancel them on its own. TrueBill has over 2 million users and has helped them save over $100 million. So don't fall for subscription scams. Start canceling today at TrueBill.com/LockedOnNBA. Go right now, TrueBill.com/LockedOnNBA. That's TrueBill.com/LockedOnNBA. The Jazz are 17-7, a clear 3 seed just below the Warriors and the Suns here. And like I said, I have not caught a lot of this team. I probably am too lazy just telling myself that I know what they look like and that there's not anything new to learn, but I probably should change that because we might be headed for these 2 teams clashing in the second round. What stood out to you about Utah this season? Am I wrong? Please tell me what looks different about them so that our audience here can be ready when they do play the Suns here soon.
Yeah, so I definitely get kind of the general prove it mentality of a lot of people around the Jazz. They were so good last regular season and then kind of unceremoniously were ousted from the playoffs. They have their own injuries, but when a team is without Kawhi Leonard, you would hope that they can, overcome that and they stick a 2-0 lead. But their offense has been incredible this year. Really, really good. They lead the NBA in offensive rating by over 3.5 points. They're at 116.9. Atlanta's at 113.2 in second. Mike Conley has been very good again. He's shooting the lights out. Gobert has been his normal self, finishing everything, setting good screens. Donovan Mitchell started slowly, but I think he's really starting to figure it out. He's had some really big performances as of late against the Cavs, the Blazers, the Celtics, and so it's kind of the same old in that regard. But and I think I think part of the reason they've been overshadowed was what I mentioned earlier, but also they haven't had one of those big winning streaks or that really, really great start like the Warriors and Suns have had. But they might be starting one. They're 5. They've won their last 5. I don't want to jinx. I'm probably going to say that they're going to lose to the Sixers tonight. But and then they play the Sixers, the Wizards, the Clippers, the Spurs, the Wizards, the Hornets, the Wolves. A lot of bad to mediocre teams that could rattle off some wins. But I don't think they're a better team than last year, truthfully. But I do think maybe the general, it might not be as tough as sledding. But my biggest worry is the defense with them. They have a lot of exploitable defenders. Joe Ingles looks even slower than his last year. I think that was an issue for him. Mike Conley, I think, is good against some size, guys, but I think he looks a step slower as well, and he's just not a super strong guard. He's also a little undersized. Donovan Mitchell, I don't think, is very good at the point of attack. Bojan Bogdanovic is kind of slow as well. So I think they're a really good team, but I still hesitate to put them in that top tier. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up making the Western Conference Finals. Maybe a matchup shakes their way, or they figure things out defensively because maybe they just figured out the point of attack, and Gobert is able to maybe play in the paint more often, and maybe not work in space as often. So they're very good, but I just can't quite get there because I worry about the defense, and I do think at the highest level they have some issues offensively. Mike Conley can just he's really good. He's really key to what they do offensively, but he also is a 6'1" guard. He was quick as a bug, but just when you're that small, it's really tough. Like, I don't want to use just a cliche or anything, but you have to be so dynamic as a creator on the ball at that size, and I don't think he quite meets that threshold. So really good offense, a little more dynamic than last year. Rudy Gay's been awesome for them. They played him some small ball five since Hassan Whiteside's been out. I even think Whiteside's an upgrade for them over Derek Favors, at least the version of Derek Favors last year, who just a little slower, didn't really have that same level of rim protection we saw in previous stints with the Jazz or years with the Jazz. But I just can't quite get there because I worry about the defense, and I just think Gobert can only cover for so much, as we saw last year, right? And I don't think that's been rectified.
One of the reasons that I'm so fascinated by them as a Suns matchup, and I think part of the reason these teams have had such exciting games against each other last season, is that some of those size things maybe don't hurt as much when you're playing Phoenix, who have their own 5'11" point guard. We don't have to peg the height down of what Chris Paul is, but Mike Conley is, not as much of a mismatch in that type of a situation. And not only the size, but Paul is not somebody who's going to consistently drive to the rim and challenge Conley and put him in situations where he's having to try to defend, disadvantageous situations at the basket or on a drive, or, running a bunch of pick and rolls where he's going to have to really navigate and try to, account for a whole range of outcomes. We know how Chris Paul plays, and I think how Conley defends, or what the capabilities he has, actually work. I think the Donovan Mitchell thing is probably the most disappointing thing about that team for me. Not having the growth defensively that, physically you would just think he should have already started to show. With all that said, I mean, they also could just be healthier come playoff time, because Mitchell, he was great when he finally played. So I don't really know how much I want to say that hurt them, because they easily took care of their first round matchup. But at the same time,
I think he
clearly
re-aggravated the ankle injury, if I recall, in the second round.
He did. By the end of the series, he did. It's just he played so well, kind of anyway.
Early on, I think when they're up 2-0,
and then it got worse. So that could help, and Conley clearly wasn't himself. So that could change things, right? So
I think for me, it's that I think if they're going to be like the juggernaut that maybe we all expected they could be last year based off the regular season, it's going to be on offense. Like they're just going to boat race teams. Like I think Mitchell's been better offensive this year, just a little more precise and patient getting to his spots. Because that's always been one of my hesitations with the Jazz, is I just don't know how much I trust a team whose clear best creator historically has been Donovan Mitchell. But I think what we've seen from Mitchell, maybe in the playoffs the last couple of seasons, than what we've seen for him to start this year. I have a little more credence in that. But yeah, I think you mentioned the defense with kind of the Jazz with the Suns. My issue with the Jazz there is like the Suns are so good at putting teams in rotation, right? And if you're having to put Bojan Bogdanovic out there, or a Rudy Gay, or a Joe Ingles, or a Donovan Mitchell off the ball, I just worry a lot. I just worry about the Suns in that regard. But it is a fair point for sure that the Suns don't have a bunch of like scoring juice on the wing, right? I mean, their wings are Mikal and Jay Crowder. And as we mentioned earlier, Mikal hasn't proven to maybe show. He's been better offensive this year, but hasn't been as good in the premier matchups, right, or in the playoffs last year. So,
and that's what we saw a lot in their matchups last year, is that the Suns' offense was able to really work. I remember those games being pretty high scoring, and then it was kind of the final domino of Ayton proving that he was sort of ready for a playoff run and could affect the game in so many different ways, was that his energy and ability to, like, his kind of functional use of his size and stuff in those couple of matchups these teams had late last year was able to, I don't want to say neutralize Gobert, but you could imagine a situation where the Jazz just shoot the lights out. Rudy's able to, take away sort of like the top 10% of easy offense that another defense might give up. And, maybe his rebounding and control of the paint, they just dictate possession so much. That could be something where you could see them losing to the Suns because the Suns kind of want to do the same thing a lot of the time. It's a different look, but they do that. but that wasn't able to really, that other stuff with the interior, it didn't happen because Ayton played so well. So I just kind of end up coming back to they're not different enough. They haven't, not that they should be adjusting solely for the Suns, but they haven't really adjusted for anybody. I mean, the Rudy Gay thing is interesting. I'm curious to see how they continue to incorporate him, but I don't know if he's really like, if we're gonna get these playoff X factor pieces written like we do every year. Is Rudy Gay really going to be at the top of that list? If he is, like, I don't really know if that's the level, like, if that's the level that you really want your X factor to be at, and it might mean taking off your best or second best player. I just, they don't seem like they've activated some of the things that would really scare me if I'm a Suns fan. But with all that said, I think we have plenty of other teams to get into. I want to talk about the Lakers, who Jackson does seem to think are an interesting up and comer here in the NBA, and maybe the Clippers and Nuggets, some of these injured teams, and we'll get a little bit more of a survey of the league. First, though, a quick word from Built Bar, the best tasting protein bar on the planet, my favorite protein bar, and they are serving up treats all December long, all holiday season long. Grab the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, filled with so much holiday goodness, rich with decadent flavor, and covered in chocolate, yet somehow low in calories, sugar, net carbs, and fat. You get the best of both worlds, delicious and healthy, which can be hard to find during the holidays. You are like a lot more likely to find the delicious and the unnutritious than the healthy, unfortunately. Built Bar gives you that extra fuel you need to bust down those mall doors and battle the holiday shoppers. You're standing in endless shopping lines. Built Bar can give you the power to make it just a little bit longer to give your loved ones the gifts that you know you need to get them. So let's see. Trying to find a flavor here. I like to throw some out that are exciting. Cookies and cream, double chocolate. Dip your Built Bar into hot cocoa, they suggest. There's no shortage of new flavors, of new ways to enjoy your favorite Built Bar. And honestly, no shortage of deals. So head to Built.com. When you make your purchase, use the promo code LOCK15. There's going to be other sales going on all month, guys. It's not the only one, but you can use that promo code all the time as well. Again, that's promo code LOCK15 when you make your purchase at Built.com to get 15% off your next order. Today's show is also brought to you by BetOnline.ag. BetOnline is the fastest and the easiest way to make a bet on any of your favorite sports. We have the NFL wrapping up. We have college football in the thick of bowl season, which can just be delightful to bet on, maybe for the fun of it, if not the lucrativity of it. But it's a big time of year in sports, and BetOnline is your number one source for all of the odds, props, and lines that you need. So go to BetOnline.ag, their new updated desktop or mobile app. Make an account, and when you do, use the promo code LOCKEDON when you make your first deposit to get a 50% welcome bonus. That's promo code LOCKEDON when you make your first deposit to get a 50% welcome bonus straight to your account. BetOnline, once again, the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. I will give you the floor, Jackson. The Lakers, we've already seen the Suns blow them out. That was in the very, very early days of the season when things were looking particularly ugly. They seem to be healthier. LeBron is, for now, back in the lineup. He battled the injury, then he battled COVID, and or maybe not COVID. We don't really know. Now he's in the lineup again. Anthony Davis is playing. Russell Westbrook is playing. They're not healthy on the margins, but they are winning games. What should Suns fans know as the Lakers maybe start to round into form?
Yeah, so I think, going into the year, everyone kind of expected them to lean more into an offense-first identity. Of course, getting more shooters, trading for Russell Westbrook, trading away, good defenders in Ken Davis, Caldwell Pope, and Kyle Kuzma, and letting Alex Caruso walk. And they're starting to figure it out a little bit. And like Russell Westbrook's been really good over the last, 2-3 weeks, honestly. Like even before, I think the Lakers as a whole looked better. And some of that was without LeBron because he was injured. But, over their last 6 games, which admittedly 3 of them have come against the Kings and Pistons. So it's not like a great, and even the Pacers are one of them. But over the last 6 games, they have the 8th best offense and the 9th best defense, good for the 7th best net rating. So again, like I said earlier, I'll get into specifics, but I think they're starting to figure it out. There's still a wide gulf between figuring it out and getting to where the Suns and the Warriors, even the Jazz are. But they're starting to run more kind of snug pick and rolls around the elbows in the mid post with Russ as the handler and LeBron or AD as the roller. They've figured some things out using LeBron at the 5 the last few weeks. They worked really well offensively against the Clippers last week, but LeBron wasn't his normal self defensively and took some risks, was late on some rotations, and so they kind of continued to cede points there. But I think, all of it comes down to LeBron, right? It's not like LeBron is going to have to be his great self. So if they can figure it out offensively with him at the 5, you'd expect LeBron to be very good defensively there as well. They weirdly kind of played him in drop rather than switching more at the 5. So still some things to figure out. And against the Celtics, Frank Vogel put Avery Bradley back in the rotation, which he has not been good for them on either end. So, and the defense still continues to be kind of tenuous. Malik Monk, they've used him well. They've kind of, early in the year, Monk was struggling because I think they were trying to kind of use him as this lead ball handler at times. Now he gets a few reps on the ball, but he's also been used as a screener, a spot up shooter. Feels like he's settling into a role. They're figuring out how to use him. So I just have confidence that they're figuring it out offensively. And I think, all of it hinges on LeBron and AD being these top 7, 8 superstars, MVP caliber in LeBron's respect. And so I think if they're that, some of that is their defensive greatness. And so they'll be at least good enough there. But I don't know exactly what figuring it out means, but I do feel like this team is clearly looking like a playoff squad, which is a low bar. But sure, admittedly, 2 weeks ago, they were below 500 and they didn't look like that. So they're figuring out how to use Russ better and kind of harmonize, with AD and LeBron. And then I think, other guys are settling into their roles. But I think the schedule gets pretty tough for them next month, if I recall. And admittedly, they even beat the Celtics without Jaylen Brown at home. So there aren't a bunch of great wins, but they also had a bunch of bad wins and ugly losses. So step by step. But I don't, by no means am I declaring they're all the way back. But I think you're seeing the inklings of a team that could get to be really good in due time with 2 great players at the forefront.
Yeah, for sure. Did you like how I said they fall flat on their face and then I wait until the very end of the show to admit that that's not all the way true? I got to bring people in with Lakers slander and then we'll get to reality by the end.
No, it's a good balance. You bring the slander and then I'll bring some of the more level-headed analysis and then we'll work off of that. You got to have a good balance, okay, right? Not everything has to be less fun.
Exactly. It's less fun. It's less fun if we admit that the Lakers are good at all. But we were talking, I remember when we first previewed sort of how the Suns stacked up, about we were completely on different pages about who their best 5 was going to end up being. I was way wrong about Talen Horton-Tucker. I feel like it doesn't seem like his season has been as promising as they might have hoped when they signed him to that contract. Are we any closer to figuring that out? Do you think the Lakers have settled? You mentioned Malik Monk. Obviously, those 3 stars are most likely going to be in it for political or actual reasons. Is it Monk plus those 3 plus where are we with that?
Yeah, that's interesting because I remember I was actually thinking about, not recently, but maybe when the Lakers were starting off slowly, and I was like, yeah, well, Brendon's a lot more prescient than I am right now on that prediction about offering more Lakers skepticism when we did that podcast at the start of the season. But definitely those 3, and I get kind of maybe the but I think those 3 have clearly been their 3 best players, and like I said, Russ has honestly been very good. I think there's still kind of this narrative Russ is the issue to an extent, but I think if you're going to frame it all like that, it would be that they shouldn't have gone away from their defense first identity, but that's not Russ's fault.
That's what it is to me more than anything. I don't think offensively, it's pretty obvious that he has to be out there. They don't have much better options, but it's you could really easily imagine a situation, a defensive matchup late in the playoffs where Russ is just being exploited, and then they probably just have to stick with him. I don't know if it's tenable to bench a player like that. It just doesn't happen. Yeah, that's really what I mean.
And I think he's honestly they've used him as an on-ball guy a little more, and he's so strong. He's so pretty good laterally, and LeBron and AD at their best can cover for a lot of things off the ball. But they need Russ offensive because LeBron has really become a huge jump shooter. I think he's taking the most threes of his career per game, or a 3-point rate. Whether that's because I think it's a combination of maybe saving us up a little bit for the playoffs and also just not having the same level of explosiveness he had 5 years ago, even 10 years ago. But they need that guy who can get downhill. They're pushing the ball. I think they're second or third in pace on the year. I don't know exactly, but they're way up there. So it's definitely those 3. I think Monk makes sense right now. right now as the fourth guy. Just with the way he's played as of late, he's been really good putting the ball in the basket, and they've used him as kind of a screener for LeBron. And I think LeBron historically has been so good with those movement shooters, those shooters who can set screens, whether it's Kyle Korver. I don't know how much Mike Miller set screens back then, but he was awesome for the Heat, excuse me. But that fifth guy, yeah, I'm blanking for some reason on all these different players in the Lakers, but I think ideally, the Lakers, this is just kind of projection, but I think ideally the Lakers would love for it to be Trevor Ariza, which feels like a lot to put on him, but Ariza has honestly been pretty good defensively when he's been available, whether it's for the Blazers or the Heat last year. I think he only played for the Heat. He only played like half the year or something. He kind of came out of pseudo retirement.
He was on the Kings, right? At the very beginning of the season.
I don't even remember. But I think those four, and then honestly, I mean, he hasn't been as good as of late, but I think it might be Melo. He's been so good for them as a spot-up shooter, shooting 42% from three. Has a really weird home road disparity from three. I was watching a game recently and they put it up, but has cooled off a little bit, still over 42%, and has been better defensively at times this year. I think been huge for them as a communicator. So you put two really good shooters around Russ, AD and LeBron, and hope the elite AD and LeBron can really cover for you as paint protectors, and then Russ be good enough on the ball. And Monk honestly is a pretty solid interior defender. Has his issues on the perimeter and kind of off the ball on the perimeter as well. But I think right now that's it. But I think ideally they want Ariza in there to give you kind of a little bit more wing stopper with size, because Russ, you don't want to be a primary perimeter defender, and you also just leave yourself susceptible to bigger creators, which they have many of, whether it's Devin Booker, Luka Doncic, Paul George. Donovan Mitchell isn't a bigger creator, but he's so explosive that might be too much for Russ. So ideally be Ariza, but right now I would say it's Melo and Monk around the kind of the three stars. But I don't know that because Vogel has not been great with rotations this year, so might be hypothetical.
They're going to be a buyout team like they always are, like LeBron's teams always are. If you have a shot at the playoffs, then players are going to want to play there. So that's always the factor, and they've shown themselves to be pretty fine to cut bait and rearrange the roster at the back end, especially if need be. So I would think, they'll get a look from those, defense veteran types that might fill out that a little bit better if Ariza doesn't work out, or if they just don't trust the young guys quite as much, or whatever it ends up being. Rapid fire here. We did Lakers talk a lot. That ended up taking the spot of, I guess, sort of the team to watch, because they are in the bottom of the standings. It seems a little weird to say the kind of frisky Lakers, but they are, surging in a way. Who else? Give me 1 minute on one other team that either is probably going to finish at the bottom of the standings that shouldn't be underestimated, or a team that maybe could be pushing toward the top of the standings in the next, month or two as we make our way toward the All-Star break.
Yeah, I mean, it's the West honestly is a little bit dire outside of the elite three, and then maybe the Lakers is that fourth team. But to me, I think it's the Clippers. I don't know if they have enough offensive firepower without Kawhi to make it happen, but that defense is really good. Paul George has been awesome on defense, better than I think in some previous years, especially as kind of a helper inside. Nick Batum, when healthy, has been awesome. Zubats has his issues in terms of playoff availability at times, or just showing that he deserves to play on the court at times. But he's been really good as well. I think Reggie Jackson, I think, is okay, but also offensively he's prone to those big series. As we've seen, he hasn't been as good this year because he's been asked to handle the ball more. But in a series that in small samples where shot making kind of reigns supreme, outlier shot making, I think you always have to bet on him. So to me, it's the Clippers. Ty Lue is such a good coach, so good with adjustments. I think he's handled it really well. The fact they're 14-12, despite Batum being out for a stretch with health and safety protocols, PG's jumper and kind of scoring efficiency waxing and waning, Reggie Jackson getting off to such a slow start. It's got to be that team. And then I don't really believe in this next team, but Dallas, I just think a team with Luka, a team that can go 5 out around him, is interesting. And I think you've seen at times them figure out that, we shouldn't run 4 post-ups for Kristaps Porzingis during the minutes he and Luka share the floor. Hasn't been consistent. They still kind of go to that too much. But they were told in 12, Tim Hardaway Jr. struggled. I think he should get back on track. So I just think a team that has good shooting around a superstar like Luka is a team to watch out for. But I don't really believe in them. I would believe more in the Clippers, even though I'm not huge on either team. But I think a team that has that great coaching, a superstar in Paul George, and a defense that's looked really good this year, despite guys in and out of the lineups at times, that would be my pick. But it's not great. It's not a lot of.
I think I used the word bleak yesterday talking about it with Dwayne Rankin on the show, and I think to me that's an opportunity for some team to either swing for the fences in a trade, or I don't know if there's a player out there to do that with this season, but somebody could and should just seize that if they have the ability to get better, or maybe it's just health, or it's just a team clicking and being able to reel off wins. But the top of the West is what it is. But I think you could imagine a team separating itself from that middle and maybe becoming that fourth or fifth, bona fide, like this is a good team down the stretch. I'm curious to see who that ends up being. Dallas's offense is 22nd in the NBA this year. That makes absolutely no sense. They were the best NBA offense in the history of the league not too long ago. I know that record gets broken every year, so you can take it with somewhat of a grain of salt.
The highest offensive rating, I don't know, relative to the league, but
yes.
And then I guess I would be remiss.
Jumping down to 22 is insane.
Yeah, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Nuggets. Jamal Murray's already almost 8 months removed from that ACL tear, and by all accounts, from stuff I've seen from Nuggets media, Nuggets. Maybe some of it is just maybe it's a little bit PR, but it seems like he's on track. He's warming up. He's playing a lot. He's doing a lot of drills and stuff and shoot around. So Jokic has been as good as ever. Taking lead defensively too. Aaron Gordon's having a good year. Obviously, they lose some dynamic aspects without Michael Porter Jr. But I think Jamal Murray comes back and plays like the borderline all-star he was before the injury last year. That's a pretty good recipe. So and I don't.
They can put out a 5 of Jokic, Gordon, Barton, Murray, and whoever it has to be.
Jeff Green's starting for them this year.
Yeah, they have Jeff Green. They have JaMychal Green still, who's a perfectly serviceable backup. They have Monte Morris still. Like that, despite Michael Porter Jr. being out, that is still such a deep team. They have that institutional knowledge. Jokic is the type of guy that really is a bona fide, I won't allow my team to be. Well, I guess I should couch it because it did happen in the second round last year. But that was, if it's that version of the team, they'll get swept again. If it's a more healthy version with Barton healthy, with Murray back, and some depth that's actually fits and makes sense, I think that there is sort of a baseline that's a lot higher than most of these teams. So, I get the Suns and 4 stuff, and the Suns fans should disrespect Nuggets fans for as long as they possibly can. But I also wouldn't underestimate them, because there is a certain aspect of you're probably not going to get that lucky twice in terms of their health. And it wasn't just
Jamal Murray, right? Barton played half the series and he was compromised. Barton looks a lot more spry and athletic. He's been a very good shot creator for them.
Was coming off an injury. He's hurt again.
Talk as much smack as you want as a Suns fan, but you won't get that version of them again. And then I don't want to name. I'm literally going to have named all 4-3 now, but I just want to make sure that the Grizzlies get their love. They're four.
Sure. Yeah, they're in the 4 seed right now.
Yeah, and I don't know what direction they want to go. It seemed like maybe they were pivoting toward finding out what their youthful core has when they traded away Jonas Valanciunas, but they'd won 5 in a row before losing on Tuesday or on Wednesday, excuse me. But I don't love that team from a playoffs perspective. But I do want to give them their flowers. At least.
Ja's a guy that's always posed problems for the Suns. Mikal has taken a step forward in terms of being able to corral those kind of really, the offense centers around this guy types of speedy, dynamic point guards. He looked a little better against Trey when they played this season. Maybe that and Steph, maybe that continues. But Ja's a guy that historically has really punished the Suns. So, the way that his game has continued to grow, I think that would be an interesting one. We haven't seen how those two teams. Well, actually, the Suns blew them out once, but that wasn't their full team, I don't think, if I'm remembering right. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I don't think the Suns are in a position where they'll have to play a team in the caliber of the Lakers in the first round again. I think that fluke has come to pass, and they might, get to actually play a bad team or a subpar team in the first round like they should. So that's something to look forward to. That is a landscape of the entire Western Conference at the quarter point here. We'll start to get trades soon. We will start to get movement. We'll start to get buyouts, all that stuff that happens as the NBA nears its halfway point. So a lot will be different. I'm sure we'll bring Jackson back on when that all starts to happen. You can read him in the meantime at Basketball News, at Dime, at The Analyst, And if you're into the Sixers or just really love Joel Embiid like I do, you can find him at Liberty Ballers. That will do it for the week, guys. Back Monday with Aaron Edwards of Crooked Media talking this Boston game on Friday and all things Suns. I will talk to you guys then.